Hi everyone, thank you for joining us. This is MediaCom's Bigger Picture live session today on making diversity and inclusion happen. So thank you so much for joining us. My name's Nancy Lengthorn. I'm Global Chief Inclusion and Culture Officer for MediaCom. And I just want to tee up today's session and talk a little bit about what we're trying to achieve here. We have some rules of engagement. This is a slightly different session to normal ones. So this is a subject that's really very much at the centre of MediaCom's philosophy. We have been doing this work for many years. It's something that's a real sort of cornerstone at MediaCom and is really important to us. And we have created these sessions because over time we've become a little frustrated with some of the industry events and non-industry events around diversity and inclusion, where there's lots of conversation about why it's an important topic and why we need to do things differently and why we need to be better. And there's generally sort of mass buy-in to that concept. But quite often we feel that when people host events, there aren't always tangible, actionable ideas and insights that we can sort of shift and lift and shift to our own organisations. So these sessions are very much an antidote to that. So this is about sharing. It's about being really upfront about the work that all of us have going on. No hot air. It's really important that we talk about how we can help each other, how we can share things so that we can move forward. And so, you know, our philosophy is that inclusion should not be a USP. This should not be something that we keep to ourselves and try and get really good at on our own. That doesn't work at all. And as an industry, we really need to move forward and speed up. Progress has been way too slow. So this is about starting conversations with people so that we can share that work, team up on things if we think that's possible and appropriate, save each other time. We have so many insights that all of us are sitting on. We can tell each other what works and what doesn't work, so we can really sort of speed up that progress for each other. Before we start, I want to say that, you know, MediaCom, this is something that we've worked on for a very long time, and I think we are, without question, further down the line than a lot of companies, but we are not perfect, and there's still so much to be done. So many more things that we need to work on. And so we're as keen to learn from other people as we are to sort of share the work that we are, that we have in place. So they're the rules, really. No hot air, just one rule. And we would love it if after this session, if people feel that there's something that they want to reach out on, if there is an organisation here today where you think, actually, that's amazing, I want to team up, I'd like to learn more about that, please reach out. This shouldn't be about one conversation. We want this to be an ongoing conversation and to forge partnerships and connections as much as possible. We have Rosie, who's joining us from Mars. Rosie is Global I&D Integration and Metrics Lead, and she's going to be talking on supporting female progression and involving men in that picture, so broadening things out to shared parental leave and shared, you know, support for families, not just making that a women's issue. And my brilliant colleague, Danny, who is an Associate Director at MediaCom. She's in the Global Tech Partnerships team, and she is going to be talking about Black History Month and planning events that are impactful and will make a difference. We are in July. Black History Month is in October, and so it's definitely the point to start thinking about that and making sure you've got something good in place. So hopefully Danny's session is really well timed for that. Before we get to the group and widen out that conversation to other companies, I want to sort of do a little bit of role modelling here on that sharing point that I mentioned, and to talk about one particular thing that we have put in place recently at MediaCom that we believe is making a big impact, and something that we're now looking to roll out globally because we believe it's a really, really important facet of an equitable company and society. And that is our sponsorship program. So we launched that about 9 or 10 months ago now. We passionately believe that mentoring is important. That should be something that is available to absolutely everybody. And we know that we can all make a difference in each other's lives. It's fantastic to have that person who is sort of a couple of years further down the line than you, who can really give you the benefit of their experience. And that's amazing. The problem with only having mentorship in place is that often when the mentorship relationship ends, the person who's been mentored is still left in a system that is broken, badly designed. They're still facing challenges and bias that other people may not be facing. And so with mentoring, you have all those pearls of wisdom from somebody in your head, but actually you may still not be hearing about the amazing job opportunities. You still may not have a network of people who can make things happen. You still may not have that person who's advocating for you when you're not in the room. And so we're really trying to focus our attention on sponsorship now. For those who don't know about sponsorship, it's basically a supercharged form of mentoring. So it's about getting very senior leaders, pairing them with people who are within a marginalized group or a group that's historically been excluded. And it's about saying to that senior leader, you have X amount of time to make sure this person gets to the next step. So this isn't just about mentoring and giving guidance. It's about sort of smashing doors down, making sure people are getting into rooms that they previously weren't in. It's about lending our privilege to that person, connecting them with our network, passing up opportunities that maybe we're given sometimes. So being on panels, public speaking events, things like that give us all a platform. Actually, can I pass that on to this person? Would they make an equally good job at this? And it's really about looking at that person's path and thinking, right, how do I make sure that they get to that next level? What can I do to advocate? What can I do to intervene on this situation so I can make sure that I push this person through the ranks? And I think often we see in our industry that diversity, particularly ethnic diversity, is often focused in our sort of junior levels. And when we hear people talking about diversity and changing the diversity of our industry, so often that immediate thinking goes to entry-level recruitment, and we cannot focus only on that. So this is really about getting people from those mid-levels up to the senior levels, and acknowledging that our systems are not equitable and haven't historically been equitable. So actually it's on us all individually to take the lead and to help change that picture. If that's of interest to anybody on the call today, if that's something that you don't already have in place in your organisation, we have a framework for that programme. We have numerous different resources. We have a nice big document that explains what the programme is and gives guidance on how to set that up. So if anybody is interested in that topic and would like to chat further, then please do reach out and we can make that as tangible as possible. So that's enough from me. That's point number one on making diversity and inclusion happen.
Hi, everybody. This is Rosie Cook speaking, representing Mars Incorporated. Thank you so much for having me today to talk about making inclusion and diversity happen. So as mentioned, I work in the global I&D team here at Mars. And prior to this role, I was the head of UK inclusion and diversity, as well as working in HR. So as IKEA explained, MediaCom explained, many of us are committed to all forms of diversity, whether that's ethnicity, disability, intersectionality. But today I want to talk about the activities we've taken in regards to gender. So one of the biggest pieces of or recommendation I would give is to take a data-based approach to diversity. So in Mars UK, for example, we knew that there weren't women at the top as much as we would like to see. We knew that we were a long way from achieving our global goal of gender balanced leadership teams. And we did a bit of analysis to identify that actually a glass ceiling appeared, as it were, at one of our middle management levels. Female progression was, 50-50, it was all happy. And then in many functions, for some reason, it declined. So that became our sort of area of focus. And we invested a lot of time speaking with female and male associates at that level to understand why was this such a phenomenon. And we ran a survey, for example, and found that not only did progression drop at that phase, it also female confidence dropped at that phase. So men and women had the same ambition, but yet our survey revealed that they had different levels of confidence. So bringing people into the room to understand this phenomenon, we did identify that it was a couple of things. So the first was that it was sponsorship. The jump between this grade and that grade is one of the biggest in the organisation. And women in particular felt that they couldn't navigate that gap without significant support. So similar to MediaCom, we created a sponsorship programme and have globally targeted at that level. In addition, we wanted to just boost confidence overall. So we invested in webinars on International Women's Day, as well as a number of groups set up, such as Women in Sales Leadership and Women in Supply, to make sure that those women who are in underrepresented functions have that boost of support and confidence. But most of all, and something that set us apart from our peers was our launch of equal parental leave in the UK in January of this year. So we identified that the maternal penalty, or the lack of confidence and the struggle to come back from maternity leave, was a significant influence on female progression. And that was felt by men too. They wished that they had the opportunity, but saw their female counterparts struggling when they came back to work. And so we did a lot of research and established that shared parental is not used. Shared parental leave is less than 3% take up in the UK nationally, because it's complicated and difficult. But also we realized that talking about female confidence and sponsorship and mentoring wasn't going to be enough, whilst there were differences for how men and women were treated when they chose to have a family. So, supported by the headwind of the government talking about this topic, Theresa May famously talked about equal parental leave just before the pandemic hit. We thought this is a good opportunity to be bold and create identical career conditions for mothers and fathers. And, well, not only mothers and fathers, but parents of any gender, whether they become parents by adoption, surrogacy, IVF, doesn't matter. So by implementing this policy, which is 26 weeks of leave at 90% pay for all genders, we've leveled the playing field for everyone, so that they no longer have to make the choice between having a family and having a career, but also that they get equal experiences. So yes, they experience the wonderful 6 months of spending time with a child when they're first born, but also, of course, sometimes experience the difficulty as well, which previously had only been experienced by women due to the amount of time that they had off. So it is a brand new policy. It's only about 6 months old, but already we've seen significantly more take up than we expected from our fathers and surrogate population, which is great. There have been some challenges, of course, arranging flexibility. What about the cultural change around gender differences? But overall, the change has been positive, to the extent that this year the UK achieved gender balance in their management population for the first time. And we're very much well on our way to achieving our global goal, which is to have gender balanced leadership teams by 2025. So that was our sort of, the thing that sort of highlighted the first year of our inclusion and diversity strategy, by creating those equal conditions for both genders. And now we've broadened our diversity strategy out much more to ethnicity and disability as well, where we're taking exactly the same approach of look at the data, identify where your pain points are, get the voices of employees who have that lived experience to co-create the solution with you, and then deploy it with confidence and speed in order to make a difference. So happy to answer any questions, whether that's a global I&D focus or a local I&D focus in the UK, or about equal parental leave or anything else. But it's an example that I wanted to share, not only about gender equality, but just how powerful it can be to base your inclusion and diversity programs, whether that's for marketing, advertising, or people strategy, in data and in user experience or employee experience as well. So thank you very much for the opportunity, and look forward to your questions.
Hi everyone, I'm Danny. I work here at MediaCom as an associate. Use some of the work that we did last year for Black History Month. So last year, a team of us pulled together a ton of events and things for people to talk about around Black History Month. And I wanted to share some of those practical tips that you could take away and think about for this year, like Nancy mentioned. So just to give you a little bit of context about Black History Month 2020, for us at MediaCom, it was the first time that we'd actually run Black History Month virtually. The year before, we'd had tons of events in the office that people could engage with, bring everyone together in physical spaces. So we had to adapt to doing everything online, which was obviously a challenge. But also 2020 was a really sinister year for racial injustice. And, Black History Month is not all about injustice and hardships. It's about celebrating Black cultures around the world, looking forward to, progress and looking back at some things to celebrate. So even though it was, even though we don't want that to be the main message of Black History Month, 2020 was a really, really pertinent year where so many things happened. So we knew that we really needed to engage people. We couldn't let the year pass by without talking about some of these big topics, but we had the challenge of trying to engage people virtually and make sure that they felt that there was a reason for them to engage. So I'm just going to share a few things that we did that I think are things that you could pick up and take away for your own planning. The first thing is just to think about creating something for everybody. There's so many different things that you can pack into a week or a month of content around Black History Month, but we wanted to make sure that we had different things to suit different people and different personalities. So what we did is we split the month into 4 different themes. We had a week around creativity, one around sports and tech, one around identity, and then we had a Get Involved week at the end. And we organised a range of different formats. So we had panel discussions, seminars where people could just listen and learn. We had some pre-recorded events and some live, so people could interact. And we also had newsletters that we sent out with some long form content that people could digest in their own time. And finally, we set up a website on our internal SharePoint where every single talk was recorded and uploaded, and every piece of content that we shared throughout the month was also uploaded there, so that people could come back in their own time, review the content. People could see it morning or evening, lunchtime, whatever suited them. So I'd say that was one of our biggest learnings about how to engage people, was just to create content that everyone can get involved in different formats to suit everyone. The second thing was giving people a really easy place to start. Like I said, there were some topics that were quite hard hitting that we wanted to speak about, and we definitely didn't want to gloss over those. But we felt that it was important to give people an easy way to start their engagement with those topics. So we themed our first week of the month around creativity. So everybody involved in this industry can engage and relate to that topic and get involved. And that was really where we started. We then followed up the third and fourth weeks with some of the more hard-hitting content. One of my favourite and I think most impactful events that we ran was about police brutality in the Black community in the UK, which I think is a topic that a lot of people are often not really aware of, that even happens. People, they understand what's going on in America, but in the UK, people aren't so familiar with it. So to have a speaker talk about that was really impactful. But we made sure that hard-hitting content did come with, appropriate trigger warnings, just so people knew that there were going to be topics that, they might want to be aware of in advance. And we put it after the content that was a bit more easy to engage with for people. And the fourth thing that I think is really important is making sure that you collaborate. We ensured that all of our speakers for all of Black History Month were all Black. It was really important for us to not try to reframe the narrative, but to allow the people, the experts, to share their work and their thinking. So for whatever type of event you're trying to plan, making sure that the message is being guided by the people who make up the community that's relevant at that time, or the marginalized group that you're trying to discuss. That was really important for us. And also making sure everybody was paid for their work. So, asking marginalized groups to educate us about topics that they that they sometimes suffer from is not the right way to go. So we made sure that we paid everybody for their contributions, and we were really grateful for them helping us with the event. And we also collaborated within the WPP network as well. So we worked with Ogilvy Roots, and that was a really great way for us to amplify each other's work within Black History Month and also come up with ideas together. And finally, I think the main thing is just thinking about how you take people on a journey throughout the event. We could have, done lots of scattergun events and talks, but I think having an overall journey that you want people to go through is really important. So at the end of the month, we had a Get Involved week, which was full of events that people could join, discussions. We encouraged people to share what they'd learned through the week, through the month, and we also made available extra resources where people could follow up and do their own learning, and suggestions of places to donate or causes to have a look at. So I think looking at the whole event with that sort of thinking about the journey you want people to go on is really important. So there were the 5 things that I thought were that I wanted to share with you today. Like Nancy said at the beginning, I'm always happy to share more information or share more details about what we did, and hear ideas about this year and what people are looking to do. So yeah, thank you for inviting me to talk.
Thanks very much, everybody, for a real whistle-stop tour of those massive projects that I know will have taken many millions of hours to get up and running. So thank you for that overview. Danny, can I come to you first? You just raised a really important topic, and that's about the payment of people that we sometimes bring into our organisations to help us deliver a Black History Month schedule that is meaningful. I think often companies don't pay, and quite often the message from the organisation to the group who are organising those sessions is there isn't any budget, so just call in some favours, which obviously means that then we're part of the problem, right? Because we're perpetuating that inequity. There are lots of people who get paid to speak all the time, and we need to make sure that that's all types of people who get paid to speak. But can you talk to me a little bit about the impact on the people within the organisation who are running those events when there isn't budget? Like, what does that feel like? Because that's often the case, isn't it? That there isn't cash, so deliver this thing that has impact, but there isn't any money to spend on it. What message does that send?
I think it's a really difficult message, because you're essentially asking somebody to fulfill a role that's part of their job, but not giving them the resources to do that effectively. So, when we engage with speakers, the question is always the first question they ask: is there budget? And so if there isn't, you remove such a big percentage of the people that you could invite to your event to speak or collaborate with. So it immediately just reduces the options you have and the people you can invite. And I think it can sometimes just give the message that it's not a priority. If there's no budget towards it, then you start to look at some of the things that there are budget for and think, why is this not up there with those types of events? So I think it's really important to, if there's no budget, then there needs to be some sort of value exchange, like a tangible value exchange, and there needs to be a reason why there is no budget, I'd say.
Yeah. I think you've articulated that really well. It is about the value, isn't it? If you're buying people cereal and fruit and whatever at breakfast, then clearly there is budget for this stuff, and it needs to be opened up for ERGs to feel like they are valued and that input is valued. Rosie, I love this whole concept of bringing men into that conversation and sort of equalising that picture. As someone who's had 3 different mat leaves, is really tough coming back to work. And there is a sense that when you return to the office, that the sort of management of family life and so on is yours. There are questions asked of women in the workplace that are never asked of men. And I love this concept of sort of balancing that right from the outset, and making sure that everybody has a sort of a similar experience, and that, that men are part of that picture as well. Can you talk to me, sort of similar point really, what sort of storytelling, it's an amazing adoption rate you've had of that policy. How did you make that happen? Because I think in some organisations, there can be a degree of stigma if men are seen to be actively parenting and actively involved in that space that has traditionally been seen as a woman's role. Like, did you face any of those barriers? How did you get around them?
Yeah, absolutely. So storytelling became hugely important because we wanted fathers to support this as much as working mothers. So when we launched the policy, for example, so in the UK, we have 7 general managers, of whom 5 are men. We made sure that when we launched this policy, they were front and centre saying, we support this. If you're a father, you can take time off, to sort of give permission from the top. What we've also been very clear to do is we're just about to do this, is to share case studies of fathers who've gone, or fathers or male caregivers who have gone off, and what made that successful, what would they have done differently, and what have they learned. Not so we put a rose-tinted lens over it, but we say, this is what you need to do in order to make 6 months of leave work, both for yourself, but of course for the business as well. But I think I will admit we had 2 headwinds of that encouraged take-up, one being COVID. I think anyone would do anything to have time with their children, I think, nowadays. So that was certainly a headwind that supported, but also Mars's family culture generally, where we do see our demographic typically being very family orientated and a lot of people having children. But what has really surprised us is we anticipated that most fathers or secondary caregivers would take like 2 weeks, 12 weeks, 10 weeks maybe, but the vast majority have taken the full 6 months. And part of the challenge of that is we didn't expect that. And so managing flexible working in the business, it's been like, I think someone used the phrase a lightning rod of like, oh my goodness, we need to support flexibility. But all we've just made sure to do is not to make that a negative story, like really share the case studies that have been brilliant. To encourage fathers to take up more and more leave, but it's almost at the same level as mothers now, which is just incredible. So
yeah, it's amazing. There's a really nice question in the chat actually, specifically for you. So I'd love to hear more about your data collection and how you went about surfacing insights from lived experience that you could then go on and action. What did that process look like at Mars?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm very fortunate to be the global head of I&D data. So if you've ever got questions about capturing what's legally allowed, how you do it, then please reach out. But what we did is we just grabbed all the data that we could in terms of employee diversity, and then put a survey over the top of that to then get that correlation of basically progression and confidence. And then the most important thing is that we took that to our employees who were in that category and said, why do you think this is? What's your lived experience? And interestingly, we apply this approach to every kind of diversity in the organization. So, for example, in the US, we're noticing a trend with our ethnically underrepresented associates that their feelings of inclusion aren't as high as our white associates, or their attrition might be higher. So again, we take that as a fact. And rather than us sort of trying to co-create the idea of what might solve it in the centre, we get those associates involved to tell us what they're experiencing and design the solution to that. So yeah, one of the biggest challenges to diversity of data is, of course, that legality, people scared to give it away. But my encouragement will be is anything you've got can be helpful. Start there to help you prioritise amongst the noise and all of the things going on. But the most important part is having people in the room who can help you solve that problem, who've lived that experience, which is what inclusion is about. So that helps.
Absolutely. Thank you for that answer. Danny, there's a few questions stacking up for you on Black History Month, so I'm going to come to you if that's okay. First of all, there's a question about, you've just talked about how you create a schedule of events that has impact and it has meaning, and it has that balance of sort of celebrating, but also making sure that people are being educated and learning. What does it look like when companies go wrong? What does a bad Black History Month look like? Is it not having one at all, or do you think there are mistakes that companies can make?
I think an example of what it might look like if it was a bad Black History Month might be a company using the opportunity to talk about all the things they're doing all the things, all the initiatives they're doing, all the things, you know, from their point of view, that they're trying to do, rather than using it as an opportunity to give Black people the floor, whether that's speakers that they're going to invite from external organisations or whether that's within their own organisation. But I think, missing the opportunity to give Black people the floor and amplify Black voices, that would be an example of a bad Black History Month, I think. And, you know, if the focus is on this is what we've done, this is what we think, I think that's a real missed opportunity. I'm trying to think of examples that I've seen in the past and I can't think of any that stick out. So that's a good sign that people are often getting it right. But yeah, there'd be some ideas about what could potentially go wrong.
That's a great answer. I mean, it is all about giving, it's about passing the mic, isn't it? The whole point is about giving other people a voice. So the company voice is not the priority there, really. We've also got a comment for you. With budget constraints around speakers and sponsors for your Black History Month programmes, do you all partner with community leaders and subject matter experts? Is it more geared to solutions that affect the Black race to supplement those budget constraints for speakers? So I think the question there is, are you prioritising and being very specific about who you're talking about?
I'm not sure I fully got the question, but I think so in terms of who should we be partnering with?
I think the question around who do you partner with and how do you make those priorities, really, given that budget constraints are sometimes there for companies?
I think it all comes down to what your objective is for Black History Month at that particular year, right? So we made a really conscious decision that last year for us, the priority was, like I said earlier, there's so many different things. Black History Month means so many things. It should be a celebration of Black cultures around the world. It should be, you know, looking forward to solutions and looking back at things to celebrate, as well as some of the difficult things that are happening and have happened. So it could be all of those things. And I think it's just about deciding what your objective is. So do you want to use the opportunity whilst it's at top of everyone's mind to talk about a specific issue? And for us last year, we said, yes, we wanted to emphasize that there's a lot going on in the States. There's a lot of awful things happening, but there's so much happening in the UK on our doorsteps that gets missed and people aren't aware of. So we wanted to focus on that. And that then led us to, okay, which groups are we going to engage with? You know, we hired somebody to speak from a charity that work with young people and help them navigate the issues surrounding police brutality in their communities. So that objective led us to the strategy of who we were going to engage with. But you might decide that for your Black History Month, you want it to be about celebrating the impact of Black people in media, or, you know, celebrating different cultures, and your workforce might say that that's what they want to do. So I think it's about setting your objective and your intention of what you want your employee base to come away from learning, and that will inform the strategy of who you go on to engage with. I really hope that answers the question.
I think it does. Do you want to give that charity a little shout out, actually, because that session was unbelievable. It was incredible. It was so hard hitting, and it was just so hard hitting. So the organisation was called Forefront, and the speaker was called Temi. She just gave a really, really great articulation of what's going on in the UK for young people and their interactions with the police. And I'd highly recommend everybody go and look her up online on Twitter and all the different social media platforms, and follow Forefront, because they do some amazing work. Yeah, she specifically was incredible, wasn't she? I mean, like an absolute masterclass in how you talk about a topic. She was, incredibly inspiring to watch. There's a question in the chat from a name I recognise, so I'm just going to touch on this one. It's about sponsorship programme, and the question is, with the sponsorship programme, how is progress being measured on those that are being sponsored? So it's a great initiative, but also the key is to see evidence that change is happening within companies, and 100% agree with that. So the sponsorship program for us, and in my advice for any company who adopts that sort of a program, if there aren't outcomes to it, stop doing it. Like, there's no point in putting that in place unless it's starting to change representation at different levels of the organisation. So for us at MediaCom, there are about, I'd say, 3 of us who are directly responsible for things are changing. And so that is literally having everybody mapped. We've got everybody in spreadsheets. We are speaking to the sponsees and the sponsors. We are mapping progress that's being made. We've already had a number of people who've been promoted, and so they then come off that program and are more likely to be put into something that's sort of mentoring based. And so we are tracking those movements constantly. So absolutely, there's no point in having anything like that in place. We cannot promise people that there's going to be some change and then a specific initiative designed to drive that change. If that doesn't deliver, then it's really damaging to have that in place. So as I say, about 3 of us who are everyday sort of stakeholders in that, and then, ultimately people like Kate Rowlandson and other very senior leaders in the organisation. They also have a vested interest in that programme and also monitoring success. We are out of time, so I just want to say thank you so much for everyone who's joined us today, whether you're speaking or listening. Thanks for getting involved. And I just want to reiterate before I close, this for us is a conversation that we have started to have regularly at MediaCom. So we've been bringing together different people to have these conversations, and it's just so important that we keep this moving. So if you have heard anything today where you think, actually, I really need some advice from that person, or, the sponsorship framework we talked about earlier, whatever it may be, please get in touch with myself and we can help make connections. And if there's something that you feel that maybe a couple of different brands can work on together, then absolutely get in touch, and we would love to facilitate that wherever possible. So thanks so much for joining us, and hopefully there'll be another session coming along in a couple of months, and we'll see you then. Thank you ever so much.